trickle in. It's awesome to see so many people here today and get started for our end of the year partner meeting. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Brian Green. I have the great pleasure of being the program director of the Adirondack Park and Basic Plant Program, APIP. Let's see. I see the
click back on the slides and then it should be.
Yeah, there we go. All right, good. Getting all set up here. Okay, well, thanks for your patience there. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to go through, do our welcome. We're going to go around the room, say your name, say who you're representing. Then we'll kind of go through and share our season highlights, do a volunteer recognition, and then we'll take a break for lunch. If you brought a lunch or want to go grab something from one of our local stores, you can, and then we'll do a second half where you get to share your highlights and everything with the team. But we know everybody, we're all friends. If you have a question at any point, if you need to get up, we have snacks back here. There are two bathrooms right down the hall, so don't feel bad about having to, if you need a bio break or something. We're all friends here. So even though this seems more formal than what it needs to be, we're a good group of Adirondackers who braved the snow to get here. And we're thankful for all the people who are joining us online from Zoom. So this is our traditional, we call end of the year partner meeting. And so I wanted to welcome everyone. It's so great to see so many partners, volunteers, and friendly faces, both in the room and online. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our 2025 end of year partner meeting. Each year we hold two partner meetings, which I want to mention is part of our contract with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to manage the Adirondack Partnership for Regional Invasive Species. But this gathering is much more than just a requirement. It's a chance to celebrate what we've accomplished together, reflect on the challenges we face, share the data and stories that guide our work. But most importantly, it's time to recognize the power of partnerships in everything that we do. All this work is central to the core of what we do at the Adirondack Park Invasive Plant Program to help us achieve our mission of working in partnership to minimize the impact of invasive species on the region's communities, lands, and waters. And everyone here knows that can be tough work. This year, the effects of climate change became even more visible, with forest pests spreading farther and faster. We saw hemlock woolly adelgid reach new areas in the Adirondacks, and on the aquatic side, new invasions challenge us to think creatively about management strategies for the pesky plants we find in our beloved lakes. Yet, despite these challenges, there is so much to celebrate and sparks that give me hope. Of the thousands of infestations we visited this year, over 40% had no plants observed due to our past management efforts, showing that if we manage small populations early, we can be successful in reducing invasive plants. We also collect hundreds of milfoil plants that were genetically analyzed to help us better understand if and where invasive milfoils hybridize with native milfoils. We made big improvements in how we communicate about invasive species to the public with new technologies, signs, and brochures. And while not as visible as our signs, we found ways to improve our data management and analysis, which helps us prioritize what we work on and show the successes of our collective efforts. Most importantly, we found our missing piece and became a full team again in 2025 with Anna joining the APIP staff. A personal highlight for me was way back in May at our spring partner meeting, which seems like years ago now. We toured the Osable Freshwater Center Conservation Nursery and helped to plant oak acorns. The oak tree is a symbol of the Nature Conservancy, and as famous ecologist Doug Tallamy says, oaks support more forms of life and more fascinating interactions than any other tree genus in North America. Where do these oak seedlings end up? Will they provide important food sources for caterpillars and squirrels? Will they stand tall for 20, 50, or 100 years? I don't know the answers, but I do know this. Small action today can make a difference that ripple out for years and decades ahead. And that gives me hope that the collective actions of our partnership will continue to grow and sustain the Adirondacks, whether it's an AWI boat steward checking a motorboat for aquatic invasive species, or many partners coming together for our SIPs for Science Love Your Lakes event, or working with organizations like the New York Hemlock Initiative to release biocontrol insects to protect important forest trees. These actions will continue to grow and sustain the Adirondacks. Thank you for being here, for your commitment, and for the incredible work you do every day for this partnership. like the oak trees, it is this interactions that make our collaboration so beneficial. So today, APIP staff will present some of their highlights from the past year, and after our morning presentation, like I said, we'll hope you stay for lunch, and then we'll get a group photo, and then we'll share some of our every group's highlights are there. But let's kick it off by having the people on Zoom. They can virtually give us a wave, or they can come in the chat and tell us where they are coming through. And while we're doing that, we'll start with my left, and we'll go around the room, and everybody say their name and their organization, so we can introduce ourselves.
Hey, I'm Sean Kittle. I'm the communications manager with APIP.
Hi, everyone. Carolyn Kessner, conservation GIS analyst for APIP.
Joanne Conley, Eagle Lake property owners, and I'm here with my fellow Eagle Lakers.
Morning, Cole Hicklin, also with Eagle Lake property owners. Gary Clark, Eagle Lake.
Susan Clark, Eagle Lake.
Hi, I'm Hannah Devo. I'm the Region 5 Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator with New York DEC out of the Warrensburg office in cooperation with New York State Cornell's Water Resources Institute.
Good job, Hannah.
Hi, I'm Beth Whitmore-Stiller. I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Outreach Specialist for New York State DEC Warrensburg office and Lake Champlain Basin Program.
Scott Ireland, I'm the Executive Director of the Adirondack Lakes Alliance and the President of the Schooner Lake Association.
Yes, Tony Feldman from Champlain Area Trails.
Oh, nice.
Everett McNeil, East Shore Schooner Lake Association.
And Nancy Budd from Adirondack Garden Club.
Guy Middleton, Upper Saranac Foundation.
Allison McKenna, New York State Hemlock Initiative.
Ben Ferber, also New York State Hemlock Initiative.
Katie Whitkovitz, Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation.
I'm Mary Glenn. I'm relatively new at AWI.
Mike Hansen, I'm also new at AWI.
Brett Wimstaff, also at AWI, the Director for the Stewardship Program.
Jen Denny, Assistant Director of the Stewardship Program, also with AWI.
Maureen Cunningham, Executive Director. I'm not going to use the acronym. It's Adirondack Watershed Institute or AWI if you don't know it.
Matthew Severance, Essex County Soil and Water.
I'm Bill Widrig. I don't know what I am. I volunteer. I'm going for nice hunter work in Lake Management trackle work on Upper Chattagay with APIP. And my friends from Vichy over here, I'm out with them doing kind of like surveying and tagging trees and whatever else they ask me to do.
Dominic Peters, volunteer, Aquatic and Terrestrial.
Marky Moffett, Osceola Freshwater Center, Stewardship Manager.
Ari Giller Linewell, I'm with the Adirondack Park and Basin Plant Program.
Peter Gernsheimer, Land Conservation Manager with Champlain Area Trails.
And I'm Anna Hardman with the Adirondack Park and Basin Plant Program.
You too.
I'm Susan Smith from Vermont, and I represent the Chattagay Woods and chapter of the Adirondack Club on Upper Chattagay Lake.
And I'm Glenda McKinnon and Moose Creek Association.
Awesome, great. Well, it's awesome to see so many friends, some old, some new, and we are thrilled to have you here. And we are going to kick this off now with Sean. Sean's going to give us the first part of this.
All right. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. I've been getting over a cold for 3 months now.
You don't have to share and reshare it.
Share and reshare it?
Yeah, those slides.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. You can keep on talking.
Yeah, so I'm communications manager. This is my 3rd year with APIP. I'll hit the 4-year mark in May. And yeah, we have a regular programming that we do every year. We have trainings, we have webinars and things like that we put on, events. Every year I try to add a few new things to our roster, whether it's some kind of outreach material, new event, just something to freshen things up and to hopefully reach a larger audience. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. This year we really focused on outreach materials, and we refreshed a couple and we created a couple new ones. So once this is, does it help if I switch it? Once this is up and running, I think I should be able to go. Are we good?
It's weird. It's like really zoomed in on the slide.
Right, John, you can keep on going. I'll try one more thing.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been doing this, communicating with the public in one form or another for well over a decade now, and I've learned a few things along the way. The reason I'm starting here is because these 4 bullet points that I'm about to go over all played a role in how we were thinking about our outreach materials, whether we were creating something new or refreshing something. So the first one is meet people where they're at. Another way to put that is know your audience. And that applies to both sort of mentally and physically. You know, sometimes people like to absorb information in different ways. Some people will show up to a guided nature walk and go along for the ride. There are some people who will never do that. They'd rather watch a webinar. They'd rather read a terrestrial field guide. They'd rather watch a recording or a video. So it's really important to put out information in different ways to reach different audiences. But also mentally too, like, you know, not everyone knows what we know. And you'll notice that all 4 of these bullets are kind of connected because the next one is don't assume the audience knows what you know. I always like to start at the beginning. If I'm interacting with people in public, you can see me here asking these kids, you know, does anyone here know what an invasive species is? And a lot of times when I'm meeting someone in public, I don't assume that they know what an invasive species is. So I like to start at the beginning. If they don't know, it gives me a chance to educate them. If they do know, then I don't have to bore them with what an invasive species is. Oh. Let's see if that can click on. Oh, there we go. Okay. And, you know, speaking of running into people for the first time, whether it's a brochure or something face-to-face, it might be the first point of contact you have with that person. If you're at a tabling event, you might have 30 seconds to get their attention, and then they're going to move on and get lunch and visit 8 other tables. So I always try to think, like, if there's 1 or 2 or 3 things I want them to walk away with, to have in their minds when they stop talking to me, really try to hone in on those. Don't try to inundate them and give them all the information at once, which leads to the next bullet, which is keep it simple. You know, I mentioned always start at the beginning, but also always use simple language. You know, don't use acronyms. Use Adirondack Watershed Institute. Don't say AWI. Don't give them an alphabet soup. We tend to do that because we talk about this stuff every day, right? But guess what? You know, the guy who lives over there who has a job that's not at all related to environmental science probably isn't thinking about this. So start at the beginning, keep it simple, and try to reach them in a number of different ways. So with all those in mind, and you know, start at the beginning, which is why I started with all of that. We revamped some of our outreach materials and we created some new ones. So I'm going to go over our new email newsletter, which is a monthly newsletter. Yeah, and if you put an asterisk, I'll sign you up for it on the sign-up sheet. Our Love Your Lakes brochure, invasive species fact sheets, and then we revamped our boot brush signs. Let's begin with the newsletter. This was probably the biggest lift. So APIP does a monthly newsletter. Prior to this has been going on since before I started with APIP, so I don't know how long it's been going on for. I give a lot of credit to the people who are putting it together. It takes a lot of time to do that, and it would be monthly. Sometimes we would do 2 a month. It was just kind of when it happened. So we wanted to get it on more of a schedule so people could expect it, but we also wanted to streamline it and do some other things too. So here's the old newsletter. So this is actually how it appears on our website. I should have cut off that top part. So if you look from here down, from Adirondack Forest Ecology down, that's what you got if you got our newsletter. Now this text part is about 1/3 of what the email was. So if you can imagine, you know, it would go all the way down to here. It was a brick of text. So the old newsletter, it was difficult to sign up for. There wasn't a simple sign-up form that you could use, which in 2025 is not a good thing. It didn't provide data to us like open rates and click rates, which are valuable. I'll talk about those later when I do my report. It was also difficult to format. So even if you wanted to add more photos here, it always looked kind of wonky. It was just difficult to use, and it wasn't pleasing to the eye. It was a wall of text. So what do we do about it? We created this new newsletter, put a lot of time and thinking into it. It now has more images, and you'll notice there's also these nice bright buttons that you can click on as well. There's links throughout the email. There are standing sections. I'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. That allows us to track the data, who's opening it, who's clicking on things. And it's really easy to sign up for, which I think is very important if you're trying to get people to sign up for this thing. So what are standing sections? I have a magazine journalism background. So when I thought about the newsletter, I immediately thought of a magazine. And if you have a subscription to a magazine, you get it maybe once a month, right? And there are sections in the magazine. So every time that comes into your mailbox, you open it up and you know it's going to have X amount of sections, right? 6, 7, 8 different sections. You might even have a favorite section that you flip to begin with. People like that. It gives the readers consistency. It gives them kind of a hook and something to look forward to every issue. But for us, it helps us keep our newsletters on point. So it takes a lot of time to put together a monthly email newsletter. When you have these categories, I'll go over each one of them in a second. When you have those categories, it's more like you're just filling in boxes. So for us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we put out an email. We can just say, okay, who wants to do the species of concern this month? Who wants to do the Ask APIP section? And it just kind of comes together quickly. And then, as I mentioned, the data tracking helps us see what interests people. So we can now look in the back end and see, like, okay, which links are people clicking on? What are they looking at? How are they engaging with the newsletter? And that, it gives us a compass, right? It's like, okay, nobody's into this section at all. Maybe we can change it up next time. So here are the first three sections. So the intro, I write the intro every month, and I think of it as a place to kind of brag about some things that we're doing, maybe highlight a couple of cool things. But it's also the place where if there's any information that doesn't fit into the other sections, it can go in the intro. If there's something cool I want to mention, like, hey, we already have 30 trails adopted for forest pest hunters, and the sign-up's only been open for a couple weeks, I can throw that in the intro. If we went to some big event and did a couple presentations, I can throw that in the intro. Then we have our species of concern. So when you get the email, you would scroll down. Species of concern is exactly what it says. It's just one species that we want people to be aware of, something that they're likely to find that time of year. We give a brief kind of little bio on it. There's some key ID features. They're nice little bullet points, so you can just scan them quickly. We have a photo and then a place where you can learn more on our website. Then Ask APIP, we do a lot of communicating with the public. We talk to a lot of people. We get a lot of questions. So we kind of collect those questions and use that as a way to, a lot of times it's kind of pertinent to what we're doing that time of year. So this was a question about, I think I found an invasive species, not positive if I'm IDing it correctly. Should I still report it to IMAP invasives? The answer is yes. So we want to remind people of that all the time. So Ask APIP's a good way to do that. So it's basically just answers to questions that we get a lot. And then we have the in the field section, which is kind of two parts. It's APIP in the field. So, the partner meeting could go in there, but anything we've done in the field, attending an event, helping out with something, doing some kind of water chestnut pull, that can go in the field section, and it's quick. It's just one short paragraph and it's done. Partners in the field also kind of swaps with volunteers in the field. So if a partner or a volunteer is doing something cool that we want to highlight, that's what that section is for. And then in case you missed it is, if we have a recording of a webinar or something like that, if we have a really cool news story that came out that we want people to see, that's where that would go. And then upcoming events, we can highlight up to 3 upcoming events. And we usually, we do our own events, but then sometimes we'll throw a partner event in there too. So that's a new newsletter. Comes about once a month. Now I will say too, sometimes we break that mold. So I'm a big advocate. If you don't have something to say, don't say it. Don't force it. So right now it's December. We haven't been in the field doing a whole lot. There aren't really any invasive species that we want people to go out and look for. So we're not putting that section in the next newsletter. We're going to kind of streamline the next couple of newsletters. And I think they'll be fun and they'll be nice and easy to read. They'll be a little bit shorter, and then we'll get back into the template in January or February. So Love Your Lakes. This is a new brochure. Actually, I'll pass it around. I urge you all to take one. There you are. And I should say too, if anybody is with an organization, if you want more of these, we have a ton of them. So let me know afterwards and I'll give you a whole stack. This is a simple, colorful, and action-oriented. So, when you talk about like getting people's attention, you only have a certain amount of time to get their attention and move on. That's what this is for. It's colorful, it's simple, there isn't a lot of text on there. So hopefully if someone sees this sitting on the table, they're going to want to pick it up and open it up and see what's inside because it's colorful and it's attractive. So this is basically a hook. This is a vehicle for a bait, getting their attention, getting them to want to learn more. The Love Your Lakes idea is to take 8 actions that people can do and put them in one place. So 2 of them are related to invasive species, but the rest are not. As anyone who goes out on tables a lot and talks to the general public knows, if you're there talking about aquatic invasive species, the public doesn't necessarily differentiate, well, you're talking about lakes, so you probably know about water quality monitoring too, or these other things that we might not be our area of expertise. They'll ask you these questions. So we wanted something that we could put in their hands that would give them that information all in one place. And as you can see on the front, it tells you exactly what it is. Love your lakes. Oh, I love lakes. Easy actions for taking care of Adirondack lakes. Sounds good to me. I'm going to open that thing up. So inside, you're going to find the 8 ways to show love for Adirondack lakes. these are all actions. They're all very simple actions. There's only about one sentence after each one. You know, don't be salty. It's about road salt and, you know, salting your walkway and whatnot. Watch the water, prevent aquatic hitchhikers, lose the lead. These are all easy things that people can do if they care about their lakes. And then most importantly, on the back, if you see it on the table here, this is the back. So this has some of our partner organizations listed on the back, but you'll also notice there's a QR code here. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a web page. And on this webpage is each one of the 8 steps that you can take, and there's more information for each one. So if you really want to learn more about why lead is bad, why using lead bait is bad, you can click on that and it'll take you to the Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation page that has tons of information about that topic. So this is a way of like, you always want to put more information, more information, more information. The idea of this is to hook them, to get them to want to learn more, and then to give them the resources so they can learn as much as they want to about whichever topic they're interested in. And I'll mention too, I'll give you a little teaser into my next talk. This actually led into an event that was held at the Hotel Saranac called Citizen Science Love Your Lakes. I'll talk about that in a little bit when I go over my section. So it became more than just a brochure. It kind of inspired this whole event at the hotel. It was really well attended. All right, now invasive species fact sheets. So, you know, again, it's like there's a lot we can talk about invasive species. Sometimes there's a species that we really want people to be aware of, depending on where we are. We're trying to get people to volunteer, whatever the situation is. And it's really nice to have something you can just put in their hands. So we have our terrestrial invasive species field guide here, which is really handy, but this has 28 species in it. If there's something in particular, like beech leaf disease, then we're like, look, we really want people to be looking for beech leaf disease. It's August, you can volunteer. This is something we can put in their hands. It's simple and straightforward. It's easy to read. It just gives a really quick breakdown of what beech leaf disease is, its impacts, and then it reminds people to report it if they think they see it. And then it goes through quick identification. So in the case of beech leaf disease, it's something you're going to notice on the leaves. So it gets into that, and you'll see that certain elements of it are bold to make them stand out. So you have darkened stripes. Stripes are most visible on the underside of the leaves. So that just kind of catches people's eye, brings them into those main key points that we want them to walk away with. If they just scan the document, they're going to walk away thinking about the darkened stripes and the curled leaves and looking up from underside. Now this, I forgot to mention, but these fact sheets are actually a template. So I worked with a designer, told her what we wanted, and I'm now able to, if we have another species we want to do, this is just our first one, I can quickly go in there, swap out the text, swap out the photos, and we can do it for any species we want to. And then if you flip it over on the back, and these print on a page, but there's 2 per page, so we cut them in half, so it's about a half page each is how big they are. If you flip it over on the back, there's some lookalikes. So we get a lot of questions on lookalikes of beech leaf disease. There's all kinds of different things that can sort of look like beech leaf disease. If you see beech leaf disease, it's pretty different. But to the general public who, might not be thinking about beech leaf disease all the time, these things can look very similar. So we wanted to do some lookalikes on the back and just to show like, hey, if you see this or this, it's probably not beech leaf disease. And then again, we have another reminder about IMAP invasives and our logo. All right, last but not least, boot brush sign. So here's a boot brush sign in the wild. This is on the Adirondack Lodge property. We did this one a couple of years ago. So we give these out. I think we did 4 or 5 this year. We give out a few every year to organizations. So if you're in an organization, you're interested in one for what year is it? 2026, let me know. But we get them printed. We work with the recipient to determine which species are going to go on it. And then we provide it. And then they have to build the station. And we're providing the boot brushes now too. So all you have to do is put the station up and then mount it if you receive one. So here's what the original boot brush sign, or oot brush sign, as I like to call it, looks like. And we rethought it. So, no offense to whoever created the original, but there's a lot of text on here. There's 4 invasive species. There's text under here. There's like 50 footprints on it. And there's all these little symbols. Some of them I don't really know what they mean. So we rethought it and we created this right here. We didn't want to make something totally different because these are all over the place and we want people to recognize that, hey, this is a boot brush sign. It's kind of a branding thing. So we didn't want to totally stray from the original design, but we wanted to clean it up a little bit. So you can see we removed the text, which is all caps underneath there, and made this bigger. Give invasive species the brush off, And then this starts off just telling you exactly what we want you to do. Brush your boots and protect our forests. You use this boot brush before and after hiking to remove soil and plant fragments, so on and so forth. There's no lead in. I have a pet peeve. If you've ever looked up like a clam chowder recipe or how to get whatever your kid spilled on your shirt out, you click on the link and it's like, you have mud on your shirt. Maybe it's a new shirt. Maybe it's an old shirt. Maybe it's your favorite shirt. Maybe like they try to relate to you. And it's like, just tell me about the darn dish soap. That's what I'm here for. Tell me what to do to remove it. Same idea here. Like we don't need to finesse people. They're already looking at the sign. It's already caught their eye. So just get right in there and tell them what you want them to do, which is brush your boots off. We reduced it from 4 species down to 3 just because 3 species is a lot. If you don't know much about plants or invasive species, you're probably not going to read all 4 species. So these 3 species are ones that relate to the area. This one is for Hamilton County Soil and Water. We also removed these symbols, which gave us space to make the text a little bit bigger, to make this bold, and just to kind of clean it up a little bit. So that's it. These are our new boot brush signs. Again, not totally different than the old. Oh, and the last thing is instead of trying to leave like a little paragraph here, what to look for the invasive species, we just use bullet points. They're quicker, and it's just like, showy magenta flowers. Sorry, I'm trying to read upside down. Flower spikes that grow 3 to 7 feet. And just boom, that's what it is. I don't have to worry about weaving it into a paragraph. Just here are the characteristics of that plant. And then here's some fun facts. So the fun facts just kind of include, maybe why it's bad for the environment or where it likes to grow. Or in the case of something like hogweed, don't touch it. The sap is really bad. So that's a space to put things like that. All right, any questions? Yes.
So with aquatic invasive species, there have been a lot of studies in what vessels are most likely to transport those. And we're always watching out for motorboats and telling the stewards that those are the highest priorities of what they should be checking. With the boots, is there a particular type of boot that you guys are like, we need to be on the high lookout for?
That's a really good question. I'd say anything with deep treads. I mean, I think any clothing or boot can carry, if you think about like a plant fragment, right? A seed or a little piece of a plant, something like that, like what can it stick to? More than likely it's going to get caught. These boots are the worst, actually. That's right. Something with nice deep treads that you can get dirt and plant fragments or seeds in.
Yeah.
It's going to be a concern.
The hikers that want to climb Cascade in flip-flops are probably not our biggest risk.
They're not. They might get like a seed under their toenail or something. Other than that, yeah. Yes.
And you get signs like that with tailored invasives?
Yeah, so I work with whoever's receiving the sign and, like, hey, are there any invasives on the property? A lot of times, like cats, we've done some for, like the Vic. So they have trails there already. So if there's any invasives there or nearby that they want to keep out.
Get one with wild parsnip or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, if the recipient's like, well, I don't know, you tell me, then I'll work with Ari and we'll just kind of talk about, they'll look at IMAP and see what's nearby. And then we'll kind of pick the species for them. But yes, is the answer. Yeah. Yeah. Each one's a little bit different. These 3 species are swapped out for each one. Yeah. Yes.
Any thought to extending this campaign somewhat to like waders for fishermen?
Oh, maybe in 2026 we can talk more about that. Yeah.
We do have a program, right, that we've partnered with for years with say the Freshwater Center, and you can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have wader wash solutions that we put out and maintain all summer long with our river steward from May through October. They're put out in key fishing pull-offs, mostly on the West Branch, Au Sable right now. If anybody's interested in expanding that to their own area, definitely just chat with me. I'd be happy to, fill you in on what I know and help you connect with people who maybe can be of even more help. But yeah, so we have something similar to the Boot Brush Station stand with a sign on it. We have a tub at the bottom that's a Rubbermaid tub that's filled with saltwater solution and a brush. We have a brochure that we put in on the side. And our river steward is responsible for maintaining those stations all, through their whole tenure. And some of them have boot brush stations nearby. We also have a mountain bike cleaning station at the flume. So, yeah, so.
I'll catch up with you then.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to chat.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say Meg has a raised hand on Zoom.
Oh, sure.
Meg, I think we can hear you if you want to ask your question or come off mute.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to note that the Ausable Freshwater Center's data over the last 15 years or so from the River Steward has also shown a good awareness from anglers about having sometimes river-specific waders. And when we had the first scares of Didymosphaenia geminata, which folks were calling rock snot in the late 2000s, we later found it's a native nuisance, but we were concerned about it being an invasive. And at that time, the state of Vermont banned the use of felt salt waders. And I think that imprint on the public has stuck with them. And they retracted the ban when Didymo was deemed to be a native nuisance. But I think that's definitely helped raise awareness within the river angling community about keeping their equipment clean and using the wader wash stations.
Thank you. That's interesting. I think did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to ask if there's a fact sheet available for HWA as well, or?
We don't have the handout fact sheet, but we actually partnered. Yeah, there's more out there if you want to grab them.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're welcome. But we could do it, actually. That would be a good one to do. We were just kind of getting those up and running, so we haven't done a variety yet.
Yeah, that's a good point that you have an issue or something that you're interested in, like the Love Your Lakes thing kind of came out from me and Tom Collins, talking. It was like, hey, we all go to these similar types of lake associations and groups, and it's us and the Adirondack Center for Loons and AWI, and like when we're out there, the individual members and the lakes are like, they don't see me as a TNC person, they just see me as like the lake person, and so like, well, how can we like cross promote or get other things? Like, how can we get a message of different things? And so, we both got a little bit busy and it kind of go through. But then when Denise came on at the Loon Center and we started talking, I was like, hey, I kind of always had this idea, because we have so many of our groups that are doing like lake protectors or lake management tracker that are also in ALAP, or they're also in a loon friendly lake. And it's like, can we just bring all these things together? Like, what are the 8 easy things that we did? So good example of how these working with other partners, getting some ideas, and like, hey, this is a need that we both have. Can we make it happen? So if there are like species, for like the fact sheet that you're interested in, I mean that the brochure from the Cornell thing came out of our Lake George Hemlock Coalition saying, hey, there's like a need. And so different people can step up and do different things at different times. So yeah, a great example again of our partnerships.
Yeah, and I should mention I worked closely with the Loon Center, Denise from the Loon Center, and then Anne from AWI on doing this brochure, and the event that I'll talk about later. Yeah, any more questions?
Also, just a reminder, in the link, and we'll send out a follow-up email with everybody that'll have these things. So if you're in the room, don't feel like you're getting left out and not getting the link. But we have a web page on our website about the boot brush and wader stations. It has a map showing where they are, showing some of the signs and different things. So we would love to help you get a boot brush or wader station in your area. So reach out to contact us. You can see that on our website. And
and instructions on how to build the website. It's like less than $100 in materials.
Yeah, we put out usually like 2 to 5 of them a year. So
yeah. All right, if there's no more questions, I'll hand it off to, I think Ari's up next, right?
Yeah, all right.
Go one.
Well, thank you to Sean for that recap in terms of the education and outreach and communication, some new things and some ongoing things from this year. And I'm going to be talking to you about the Terrestrial program, bit of a season recap for what we've been up to with invasive plants and forest pests. and then really highlight some of the specifics in terms of what we've been doing with particular emerging plant species, and talk about some forest pests on the move that Brian alluded to earlier. We've definitely seen an increase in both the effects that we're seeing from forest pests and as well as the distribution. And I keep pressing the wrong button, but all is well. I want to credit the APIP team that I worked with this year. I'd say like almost all of the photographs from this presentation are from these folks. So huge thanks to them for all their work and their photos. It was Rebecca Tamagno's 4th season as invasive species steward. So huge thanks to her for coming back with so much expertise and hitting the ground running. Rhoda Peterson started this year as the invasive species assistant, and we'll dive into a bunch of the impactful projects that she worked on. And I believe it was our 14th year working with the contract crew for 10 weeks this year with invasive plant control. So they came up from Tennessee, and yeah, truly amazing crew. In terms of Becca's work with the stewardship position, we touched the ground at 24 different DEC campgrounds in the Adirondacks. You can see those in the purple points on this map. And we also did targeted what I call EDRR, early detection and rapid response surveys, really throughout the Adirondack Park. So that's huge in terms of building where these invasive plants are and where they aren't. Becca also continued a program with biocontrol releases for purple loosestrife suppression. Crown Point, we have enough populations where we're collecting from there and then releasing at new sites. Definitely not eradicating loosestrife, but keeps it in check. And it's great that these beetles are self-sustaining over the seasons. So they really do the work for us. We don't need to be as hands-on at those sites. In terms of our program at large, we visited about 2,500 sites total. And like Brian was saying, thankfully, a lot of those were no plants observed from historic treatments, about 43%. And that contract crew, goodness gracious, well over 10,000 miles driven between 2 trucks. You can see at this map, bottom, we cover a lot of state and county rights of way in partnership with DOT and different counties. Really, they cover a lot of ground with survey and control, especially with a lot of these clonal plants along transportation corridors. And it's really limiting the spread out into more natural areas. So one of the big projects I want to report on is the EAB Biocontrol Release Program. This is in partnership with the USDA APHIS. So in Michigan, they breed out 3 different species of biocontrol wasps. And the past 2 seasons, they were released at a private parcel in Warrensburg. So this was the first season of these yellow pan traps that you're seeing here. We put out 15 at the release sites to monitor are any of these wasps sustaining over the years. And ultimately, this gives me hope for keeping EAB pest pressure down. We're definitely going to see, as I'll get into, more mortality from emerald ash borer, but I don't think we're going to see the extirpation of the species from the region, especially if we really can document these biocontrols from establishing. Unfortunately, we don't have any confirmed establishment. Huge thank you to the DEC Forest Health Lab that did a lot of the trap check analysis. We do have some suspected parasitoids, and we're awaiting that confirmation from USDA back in Michigan. So a really heavy lift for this project, but I think it's a really important one. As we're seeing emerald ash borer emerge in new counties, these sort of releases are certainly going to be on the docket. This is the second ever in the Adirondacks, the first being in Point Rouge. So I definitely wanted to dive into some of our emerging plant species. A big part of what we do for projects in-house and what we advise on is get these infestations while they're small, while they're still manageable, where suppression and maybe even eradication is still feasible. So I wanted to start with a bunch of good news. These are different species that are very limited in distribution for the park overall, like clonal tree, Japanese angelica tree, just one site, similar to Myoleminate in Plattsburgh, Scotch broom and Newcomb, and giant hogweed. More and more sites each year in the Adirondacks are getting shifted to locally eradicated. So these are really good examples of it's not a one and done or magic wand approach, but if we can get these infestations early, it really makes an impact locally and from spreading out further. Some of the other emerging species where we are seeing a bit of expansion is wineberry. It's a rubus, like a blackberry. But as you can see here, they cane. So as gravity takes hold and they grow up, they grow new roots and expand that way. So we are seeing, even with just mechanical control on a Lake George island, Long Island campground, we are seeing fairly effective suppression. But then doing surveys in the area, we have found new populations in Bolton Landing. But I think this is a great EDRR, early detection rapid response example, where if we keep up with this, we really can keep these in check. Tree of Heaven, no major changes in distribution for this year. The different populations you can see in the red dots, in particular by Hadlock Pond, down by Lockhart Mountain south of Lake George, and then also in Bolton Landing. Big thing that APIP's doing here is really honing in on best management practices. These clonal trees can really have a propensity to re-sprout when they're cut. So to use a chemical treatment before they're cut can really limit that. We're seeing a lot of success, but there's a lot of matrix of different public, municipal, private properties. So it's a pretty big effort just to get permission to get on the properties to survey and then treat. But it's definitely important work to keep up with.
Ari, what is the red dot near the top?
That would be the Bolton Landing population.
Okay.
Very close to Apiando Farm.
Okay.
And then Japanese silkgrass. These were pretty big expansions for this year. Population up in Hague and then down by Hadlock Pond. The species gives me pause because of its propensity to spread. Those seeds, those awns, once they reach maturity, really can grab onto equipment like logging equipment, hiking boots, animals. So I was seeing a fair amount of not necessarily invading into undisturbed forest areas, but a lot of skid roads like you're seeing on the route these pictures here. It is becoming pretty widespread. So I think this is something we really need to double down on our survey control efforts, especially if these areas are being actively used by equipment like logging equipment or an ATV. This is a tricky species to keep at bay. And another one where we're going to be honing in on our best management practices. Properly timed chemical control, weed torching, mechanical control, I think are all important tools in the toolbox for this species. We'll definitely be hearing me talk about Japanese stiltgrass more. And then some interesting plants that just came in for the first time from staff surveys this year, like narrowleaf bittercress. That's a report from Keene Valley, Floodwood Road in the St. Regis Canoe area. It doesn't seem to be invading natural areas, but just edges, but definitely something that we want to double down on our survey efforts about. And then winged pigweed is more of an agricultural weed with known glyphosate resistance. We spotted that in a DOT yard this year. So more to come, but we're definitely trying to catch these things early. And really a huge thanks to everybody involved. You know, there's 4 or 5 of us for the course of 4 or 5 months. We have 6.5 million acres. So this work would not be possible without all of you, all of the partner organizations, the public. So thank you so much for whether you're reaching out to me directly with questions about how to best manage a plant reports, reporting to IMAP invasives, and all these amazing working groups like the Lake George Hemlock Initiative and DEC Forest Health, New York State Hemlock Initiative. When we found a new infestation, when one was reported for hemlock woolly adelgid for HWA, it was previously just way to the south in Lake George. And then about a 50-mile jump this year outside of Keysville on the shore of Lake Champlain, we found it. So not great news, but better to know than just to have it sort of in hiding. That's what these red marks are here. But then when you see these blue dots, these are all partner follow-up surveys where we surveyed for hemlock for HWA and didn't find any. And this is over the course of like mid-July to now. So I think it's a really good sort of graphic example of we are all working together. So many of these projects, Hamilton County doing a forest past walk and talk where we don't have any known presence just to get the awareness out there early. AuSable Freshwater Center in the town of Keene doing a community work day, removing vines from the shorelines of the AuSable River, working with DOT for our rights of way work like you can see on Cascade Pass here. Lake George Land Conservancy doing forest pest walks where they actively have beech leaf disease. So thank you all so much, and let's keep it going. Definitely be in touch with any immediate needs you have. I'm excited to work with you all more. And a big part of that is the forest pest hunters. We got some of them here, but I just wanted to sort of brag on their behalf. Inspiring efforts. We do beech leaf disease surveys in the summer, and then hemlock woolly adelgid in the winter. So this past summer, we had a group of about a dozen folks go out, adopt 44 trails, and make some really meaningful observations for beech leaf disease. We're certainly seeing it spread to the west of Lake George, like the Cat and Thomas, Pole Hill area. We got an observation, might have been Bill, north into the Faro Mountain Wilderness. And then Betsy went out and found confirmed beech leaf disease by Otter Lake. And we found some staff potential observations by Old Forge. So that's really showing that I think beech leaf disease is moving both from the south and from the west. And we're definitely going to keep up with monitoring that. And then hemlock woolly adelgid, hot off the presses. January 22nd is our kickoff webinar for this year's hemlock woolly adelgid survey season. We've got Nick Diechler talking about biocontrols, and then I'll be giving a brief rundown in terms of how you can get involved. But looking at the data last year, not only is it impactful in terms of really defining that leading edge, but it's directly informing future management. The Lake Sacandaga infestation, thank you to Bill for really further delineating that out. That was selected as a biocontrol release site last week. So it's really like directly benefiting the region, and this data is imperative to really scoping these projects accurately.
There's plenty of stuff for them to eat.
What is it?
There's plenty of stuff to eat.
Yeah, sounds like there's enough adelgid there. But that's another biocontrol program where I think we really are like tracking this establishment, and it gives me a lot of long-term hope, not for saving every hemlock, but for long-term hemlock survival in the Adirondack. So a huge shout out to staff for our EDRR surveys. We're out there doing it just like the forest pest hunters all over the region. And we are getting some movement. I alluded to these new western observations with beech leaf disease, moving a bit to the north. You can see those on the red dots on the map there. With Emerald Ash Borer, a huge thank you to partners with Lincoln County and Essex County Soil Water Conservation District. Very notable confirmations this year. I don't take credit, they were their traps, but the data is still super important. Scroon Golf Course, Ticonderoga. So we're certainly seeing it move into the Champlain Valley and then north towards the blue line. From the north. And hemlock woolly adelgid, yeah, thank you to so many partners involved. We're really treating at scale on priority infestations in the Lake George watershed. But that data is really important throughout the Adirondacks, especially with those new sightings in the Champlain Valley this year. I think when the adopted trail map comes live in a couple of weeks from now, we will certainly be seeing very important areas in Lake George, but also in Lake Sacandaga and now in the Champlain Valley. So I'm really excited to join you all in surveying this winter. And that's about all I've got in terms of season recap. But yeah, as you can see, especially with the map that Carolyn helped make here, these red points on the maps are new confirmations for this year for these different forest pests. And I think between people moving them around potentially, and certainly climate changing, yes, we're seeing new distributions and probably some effects of mortality moving forward. So best steps for us, I think, are really established, like the monitoring plots we're doing to the tune of about 150 ash trees and 2 long-term hemlock monitoring plots. I think those are important for tracking changes over time, but also unlocking potential lingering trees. Are any of these trees in affected stands resistant? And can they be bred out for reforestation in the future? And with something like beech leaf disease, what do those changes look like in the Adirondacks? Do you see symptoms progressing from curling to defoliation? 2 to 7 years is not a good enough range. Are we seeing that in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I think that's very important for informing our decisions for what's going to make the healthiest forest. We can anticipate changes in the Adirondacks with forest pests being on the move. There is no doubt. But I think managing things like the impacts of deer and understory invasives like that stilt grass I was talking about that might inhibit future forest regeneration. I think those are the right approaches, and I'm so humbled and honored to be working with all of you on this stuff. So hopefully some good information, and happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Hi, Ari, thank you for all your work you're doing. I was just wondering if you were able to do the Phragmites work on Route 374 this summer?
Not all of it, but certainly some of it. And huge shout out to Noah, the team leader that went back there. Yes, we'll have to talk more.
One of our association's concerns are like beach leaf. What's the solution? Are there any solutions? Biocontrols. I mean, we see all these invasives coming in. Pretty soon we're gonna have the Japanese knotweed left, I think. But I mean, we monitor, we find stuff, and what do we do? I mean, what are we doing about beach leaf disease and stuff?
That's, I'd say, of the three main forest pests that I was talking about, the one that the least is known and the most research is still ongoing. So we know that it's caused by a nematode. We're not sure how it spreads from place to place, but it certainly is present in leaf litter, even if it's desiccated for multiple months. I bring those things up because that's like hot off the presses studies. And I'm certainly keeping an ear to the ground with things like silvicultural studies that both the private sector are doing and like ESF is doing in different experimental plots. Because I don't think with any of these forest pests, eradication is really on the horizon, but how can we best manage the forests to live with it? I hope to have better answers for you with beach leaf disease moving forward.
Well, like they found it in the Farrow Mountain wilderness. They're not going to do a silviculture back there. It's all state land. So how do you manage places like that?
With something that new, I think it's looking at sites that have had beach leaf disease for the past year and the past 3 years and track those changes over time. How long does it take for those trees to lose their leaves and die back, and at what scale? And if we can learn from, as far as I can see, Farrow Mountain, we're at year 1. So what can we learn from these years? More Adirondack places.
I just feel more comfortable if there's solutions in there for some reason.
You know, that's you know, sometimes the challenging part is, you know, we put a lot of time and effort to find something. We found it. Okay, now what's next? Everybody wants to jump right to the solution part of it. You know, that's like our human nature. And you know, for some of these things, you know, it's like, as our lake associations know, like, you know, Screw Lake, like how many decades have we been working on milfoil? You know, it's not we don't have a lot of these things a one-off answer, and usually they're multi-pronged answer. So like with like hemlock, we're doing integrated pest management. So we're using different tools in different places at different times. You know, there are some techniques, some chemical management with beach leaf disease that really only scales for residential. Like you have a favorite beech tree at your house and you want to save that one. You know, we're not going to be able to, you know, do that on a large scale things for, you know, the forest. But, you know, a lot of things that we're trying to do is just figure out like, what is the trajectory? What's the best management strategy for these different land parcels? And, you know, part of the reality for some of this was that over the long term, some species will be winners and some species will be losers. And we're just trying to hopefully prepare our forests that it can be as resilient and healthy by still providing a lot of the benefits, with maybe a different species coming to the lead and another species kind of pulling back.
What are your thoughts on non-chemical methods of especially invasive plant removal?
Yeah, I think when it's feasible, that's great.
So what do you have any non-chemical methods that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the species. I think we've had a lot of success with things like with gloves on, wild parsnip and garlic mustard for our DC campgrounds has a really demonstrated history of success over the scale of like 10, 15 years. When it's a really small population, I think that's important, just keeping up with surveying routes like knotweed, Phragmites, pretty difficult to control established populations without chemicals. But if you catch it early enough, never say never. And certainly like we have a weed wrench for woody plants. So things like honeysuckle, even buckthorn, I think, yeah, mechanical is totally an option.
Sorry, can I throw you some questions from the chat on Zoom?
Sure.
Steve would like to know if we've had any new Japanese tree lilac spottings this year.
No.
Okay. And then there's another question from the Hadlock Association, who's surprised to hear about some of the findings in their area this year. Do we reach out to associations when things like this are found?
Yeah, associations or me, if they're referring to tree of Adam, I'd love to talk to them about it.
Beech leaf disease and Japanese stiltgrass.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how much proactively we reach out to them, but yeah, feel free to reach out to us, and Ari's happy to talk with you more about what was found near Hadlock this year.
Ari, I was wondering, are there any plans, or is there currently anything similar to forest pest hunters, but like looking for invasive plants instead?
Yes, it's not something that I've been actively promoting. So like there's different groups within IMAP Invasives. So I think it's APIP Volunteer Forest Pest Monitoring. It's the Forest Pest Hunter group. And I've been seeing some reports come through this year through the APIP Volunteer Invasive Plant Monitoring, I believe it's called.
Okay.
But yeah, whether it's not really a formal group, but if you see something, please report it.
Okay.
I'd love to review it, and it's all very helpful.
I just wanted to mention that, we have kind of designated seasons where we say like, August we kick off beech leaf disease. If you're interested and you know what you're looking for, and I found it like 2 weeks ago. So you can see it on dried leaves. I mean, a lot of young people tend to hold those leaves on off. And it wasn't anything I was out looking for, but I just, was doing HWA work and I was looking, oh, there's beech leaf disease. And like put it in my map. So you can find it now.
Yeah.
So, if people just think, well, it's only August. No. And then I found it as early as June. What's going on? So it's out there.
Yeah. And we give a lot of resources that are quite specific for like formal seasons with disease.
And that's the best time to see it.
But if you guys are going out and you see Japanese knotweed or you found something crazy, we'll take all that data too, for sure. We just don't have as much formal survey support for it. Did I miss a question here? It's great chatting with everybody. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Art.
All right, well, hi, everyone. We already did our introductions, but again, I'm Anna Hardiman, and I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Manager now with APIP as of June. So it was a very busy summer, and I had the pleasure of meeting many of you either through calls or emails and meetings. And then my favorite way to meet you is to be out on the water with you. So fortunately, I was able to do a lot of that as well. So thank you for making this summer a very warm welcome to this new role. I have really appreciated spending time with you all. All right, so another important part of our team this summer was Ellie Smith. And Ellie was our invasive species seasonal assistant this year. And this was their first year in that role as well. And they did an amazing job. So set a record-breaking 85 early detection surveys, which is definitely the most that a seasonal assistant has done in a single season. So it's really impressive work. But Ellie also helped with a lot of other high priority aquatic projects throughout the summer. So big thanks to Ellie for their hard work and their wonderful presence on the team this summer. Our Lake Protectors program holds several trainings each summer. We hold one virtual training and then 2 in-person trainings. And the Lake Protectors program, you can start by attending a training that teaches you the basics of AIS identification for the 16 focal species that APIP looks for. And then with that training comes kind of the the important follow-up piece of how to report what you're finding out there. So using IMAP invasives and using our online survey, our lake protector survey, to report after they've completed a survey. So the lake protector volunteers get trained, and then they sign up to go survey a lake or two or more if they're feeling very eager each summer for invasive species and report back. So this summer with our 3 trainings, we had 51 volunteers trained, which is awesome. And they did report back, which is wonderful to see. So we had a total of 168 surveys submitted, and that's combining all of the APIP staff surveys, the partner surveys, and those volunteer surveys. We had 13 partner lake associations with their reports this summer. I think a total of 22 reports in total from the lake associations. And we had 9 individual volunteers as well, who reported a total of 18 surveys. And these surveys represented 127 different water bodies. So that's a really impressive number, and is some great coverage of a lot of land and water. So obviously there's a lot to cover, and it really is very helpful when we're all out there with the shared goal and can record our sightings and put them all in one place so that we can do our yearly census of AIS in the park and see how we're doing and where things are. This was APIP's 8th year of assisting with the monitoring of invasive milfoil management. So we have lakes that participate in our lake management tracker program. And this allows them to do a monitoring each year, a kind of a census of the milfoil presence in their lake. And this gives them a sense of what their management strategies are looking like. So it kind of quantifies a lot of that management work that's been done in a year or 2 years or 3 years. We have lakes who've been participating for many years, and it gives them an accurate picture of where they're headed and can help provide insight into that adaptive management strategy so they can tweak their strategy and their management to make sure that they're being successful after seeing those numbers. So we spent a day with Hadlock volunteers. I see Penny is here with us this morning virtually. We had a great training with them on Hadlock, which is one of the 7 lakes that participated. And with Hadlock, Eagle Lake, Friends Lake, Lincoln Pond, Loon Lake, Pex Lake, and Upper Chateauguay, all of those volunteers submitted a combined 1,059 observations, which is really impressive. It shows that there was a lot of time spent out on the water and doing those surveys. So really impressive work. And this is what that data looks like on the back end. So this information is found on our website. There's a dashboard for the lake management tracker for those observations. And so as the lakes are submitting them, they can go online and just see what that looks like. And there's, this is kind of a quick picture of what that census looks like. And now at this time of year, we're looking through those reports a little bit more thoroughly and going through to create reports for each lake that give them kind of a deep dive into what those numbers look like so that they can inform their strategies for next year. But it's a great job by those Hadlock volunteers and many others too. APIP also participated and led several AIS removal efforts this summer. Ari was talking about how it's easier to manage infestations when they're in small numbers. So that's what we're doing at Weller Pond, removing a small population of water milfoil, Eurasian water milfoil, hoping to keep it from getting a strong foothold there. And we had a couple other projects. We at APIP have been managing water chestnut at Lake Alice annually for many years now. And it's been encouraging to see those numbers decline, which bodes well for the trajectory of that persistent annual removal. It's a slow process, but it works. And this is Brian out on Lake Alice. And then underneath we have Ellie. Maybe you can see Ellie's behind the mound of water chestnut. This was on Lake Champlain. So we spent some time with a group organized by the Lake Champlain Basin Program, doing removal at 2 different launch sites on Lake Champlain. And cumulatively, that group of a bunch of organizations removed 7,000 plants. So it was really successful and busy day for us all. And on top of that, Ellie spent a day working with the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps doing another removal on Lake Champlain for water chestnut as well. This is also the 3rd year of the Lake Champlain boat launch monitoring, a project that was started to kind of assess the the success and the work that diverse assisted suction harvesting does in relation to removing the plants in the longer term and also the movement of those plants. So we've worked with some partner organizations to get that data and try to kind of piece that together. But it involved going to 5 different boat launches and doing a point intercept methodology of surveying to get that milfoil census from those boat launches. So 100 monitoring sites with 2 rake tosses at each point. And so we're sorting through that data too. But on year 3, we're starting to see some interesting numbers and maybe some success on that. So that's encouraging. This was also our 3rd year of doing eDNA monitoring. And we started this in 2023. And since then, we've kind of tweaked it a little bit. Last year, there were a few changes to the equipment that we used, and we used different volumes of water. We also did 2 sampling seasons, sort of. We sampled in July and in September, and we found greater accuracy with the September monitoring. So we built on that knowledge, and this year we sampled in September again so that we could get the clearest readings possible. And we sampled 7 different samples from 7 different lakes. Lakes that we know do have Eurasian water milfoil, sort of as a test to see the accuracy of this method. And so we did sampling right kind of in the middle of the beds of Eurasian water milfoil where we can confirm that it is in fact there. We did sampling kind of nearby those beds, so within almost sight distance, but not quite, as well as in the deep water and at the launch sites to kind of see how far the success rate can be. We know the Eurasian water milfoil is in the water, but we just kind of wanted to see how far out we could trust that data and see how we can kind of keep building our understanding of how this works and how we can use that in the future. So those 7 lakes, and we had some volunteers help us get to those points. Always appreciated. So thank you for spending time with us out on the water while we were monitoring for eDNA. And lastly, Brian alluded to this earlier, we collected a lot of Eurasian water milfoil and other variable leaf milfoil, as well as native milfoils from 9 lakes this summer. We were working with SUNY Oneonta and the Lake Champlain Basin program to kind of get a better understanding of what our milfoil genetics are in this region. We've had some questions about potential hybridization of the different species, the invasive milfoils and the native milfoils. So we spent a lot of time out on the water trying to find both. And so in total, we collected 163 different plant samples, which we prepared and we sent into the lab at SUNY Oneonta for analysis. This is Ev. Ev spent a couple days with me out on Silver Lake. So big thanks to all of the other partners and volunteers who've helped with these projects and submitted reports for the programs. It really makes a huge difference when you lend a hand and sometimes vote access. So thank you very much for that. And so that's kind of a summary of the projects and programs that we've been doing this summer. It's been very busy and it's been an exciting time for me as I get to know these programs and also all of you. So thank you for being great people to work with and making these projects a success. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. We can chat later too.
What are you finding with the milfoil DNA?
We don't know yet. It's still being analyzed, but we're looking forward to finding out. Yeah.
I know with like the eDNA, it can be difficult to distinguish between species of milfoil. Is that kind of what you're going to be using the genetics research for?
Yeah, so this is a project being led by Alex Satola from SUNY Oneonta, and they are doing, it's funded by the Lake Champlain Basin program, and they are doing across New York and Vermont and in Quebec, looking at both the phenotypes and genotypes of native and invasive milfoils. We know from the Midwest, research doing there that there are frequent hybridizations, especially between Eurasian water milfoil and northern, which is the native, northern water milfoil, which is native. And a lot of times, like Anna and I will be out in a place and just like, you just see like these milfoil and you're just like, man, this one looks really weird. Like part of it looks like this species, part of it looks like that. I'm sure you probably see some of that too sometimes. And it's like, is this a hybrid? Like, how do we really know? Like, technically, you can really only know by doing genetics. So trying to get better markers, trying to get better genomes, understanding of that, and yeah, trying to fill up some of that because there are some. I mean, I think anecdotally, like there's places where like Anna and I go out, I'm like, this looks like a hybrid. Like, how could it, have these characteristics and these things? But the other part about our invasive plants that's really interesting is how plastic they are in the water, especially the aquatic plants. A milfoil growing in 2 to 3 foot of water in a very warm, shallow place looks very different than milfoil growing in 15 feet of water in a really cold, clear lake. The more time I spend on these lakes and spend with these plants, I get a lot. I'm very impressed with how adaptable they are. Why they're such tough things to kind of remove. Yes.
Characteristic. I was just going to share, there was a comment from Meg in the chat on Zoom that these results might have direct impacts on management because some hybrids may be resistant to certain treatments.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting things, research especially done in the Midwest that has shown what we call like hybrid vigor. So lots of times when you combine 2 species, they can be native species or it happens with like a native and invasive, that the offspring of them shows increased characteristics or traits that make it a stronger performer than either of its parents. So maybe some of the, it's interesting, like we have all these lakes and we're doing different management techniques and different things, and some places work better than others. Well, what of that is about the plant itself? Maybe there are some things about the individual genetics of these plants or where they came from, different strains, that would make them perform better in certain lakes. And so that's why some techniques might not work as well as in other places.
And I don't think you've heard the lake charge for Zellicoe. There's been some residual turnup in some of the sampling there. Is there anything do we know about like programs that have been started for other lakes in the Adirondacks that are maybe on hold by that, or is there?
No. Yeah. Well, that is still very much a development, and we love data, so definitely encouraging more research across the board on any of these different projects and solutions. But it's also something that we've seen be really successful as a management tool in lots of lakes. So I think there are plenty that are comfortable with that and happy with where they are in their management plans. So yeah, still kind of evolving as always, but yeah. Good question. Do you have a question over here?
Yeah. Does your study include or have you thought about looking at a particular lake before and after Percelicore application? Would you do the genetic analysis of the milfoil ahead of time and then do immediate after or maybe a year after to see if the Percelicore is having any impact on the genetics?
We have not done that yet. Some of these lakes that we sampled have done chemical management on it. And that's kind of getting to like the comment that Meg was making, or kind of these different things. Yeah, like ideally in the future, we're hoping that as part of this research, like we have better markers and better understanding of like what strain of Eurasian water milfoil do you have in your lake? And then can we compare that to other lakes that have that strain, and what techniques, management techniques, not just chemical, but like mechanical or, dash, benthic mats, whatever the management is, do we find that some techniques work better than others with this specific strain? I see a couple questions coming in here, but one says, we notice an increase of variable leaf milfoil or broadleaf milfoil in Utawana this year. What is that a result of? Drought?
There were probably a lot of factors, but it was just a good year for plant growth in general because the water was low and it was warm. So even native species, we were seeing lots of native plant growth, and invasive species tend to be more tenacious and take up more space. So when the conditions are good for native species, they're excellent for invasive species. Could be a factor there.
So I see another comment in here from Lenny. So over the many years, you have been monitoring invasive species populations. Are aquatic invasive species populations increasing or decreasing?
Well, I think the presence of invasive species is increasing. The management is also increasing. So you have both of those happening at the same time.
Yeah, Lenny, I'll chime in and say, like, that's your classic answer where you respond to and say, well, it depends. The good thing about like the lake management tracker program is so like lakes that have been taking part of that, so like Eagle Lake, who's here, and Upper Chattagay, who's here. Paradox Lake was a great example of where we have the data where they've gone out, they've been monitoring, they showed a strong increase in it. And then they were able to say, hey, we need to kind of switch our strategies. They used a different management strategy. And then the next year when they went out, they showed that the milfoil was much lower. Susan and Eagle Lake are also seeing a similar thing in the areas that they did their management here. So that's a good plug for saying why we monitor. We're not monitoring just to collect this data for no reason. We're monitoring to show that we are making an impact. Use that for funding and going when we go to do grant asks or go to your lake association. This is how you can say, hey, the work we're doing, it's making a difference. And here's all our data from the past 3 years, 4 years, 5 years that shows we're moving in the right direction. Sometimes though, we've been working with some lake associations and it shows actually we're not really seeing much progress. We're not really getting to where we want to go. Maybe we need to start thinking about using a different tool, a different strategy, or a different technique. And that's a big part of these adaptive management plans that we're big supporters of.
How much do you look at other regions like the Great Lakes, Wisconsin, and just other regions for solutions, and also just comparing how are the Adirondacks doing compared to other regions in addressing and managing invasive species?
Well, there's a lot of communication between, certainly in New York, all the different prisms. We communicate and meet regularly to work together and talk about the things that are happening, the evolving challenges, and also the solutions and where we're seeing successes. So there's a lot of communication between different regions, and that is really helpful, partially because it gives us kind of a warning when other areas are starting to see changes that we need to be aware of. And also it's great because more people trying different things to find solutions is always helpful and good when we can communicate those successes. So there's a lot of collaboration on that.
And there's a lot of great resources from our other lake heavy states. So Wisconsin, Minnesota. Minnesota has one of the best aquatic invasive species research institutes in there. So they have a ton of great resources. So yeah, we're all trying to connect in and share different things. And we are fortunate in the Adirondacks overall. When we look at our landscape, the vast majority of our lakes are not invaded. That's a big thank you to our boat stewards who are out there being that front line of protection all the time, and why we invest so much money and why we're doing so much education and outreach and talking to so many groups. So yeah, I think overall, when we go around to other places, Anna and I go out, like I was at the National Aquatic Plant Management conference this year, and they're very impressed by the work that's being done in New York and especially in the Adirondacks.
I was just gonna say I saw Meg pop her hand up on Zoom, so I'm guessing she has something to chime in on this.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to speak from the perspective that New York State is also engaged with the Great Lakes panel, the Northeast Aquatic Invasive Species panel, and the Mid-Atlantic panel because of the geography of the state. And that really opens the door for New Yorkers or the state agencies to be very aware of what's going on at the national level. The Lake Champlain Basin Program also sits on the National Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force, which is co-chaired by NOAA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And as Brian said, APIP and many partners in the room do sit on national stages at the North American Lake Management Society, at the Northeast Aquatic Plant Management Society, and with the National Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. And the former AIS and then director of the program at APIP, Hillary Smith, now Oles, or was Oles, now Smith, is also working with Department of Interior on rapid response planning with the agencies within the Department of the Interior. So the Adirondacks are far ahead of most geographic regions in the United States of America in terms of awareness of the public that lives within the Blue Line and outside about aquatic invasive species, spread prevention, early detection monitoring, research, and awareness. And the state of New York is particularly ahead of the game in terms of statewide planning for invasive species management and staffing the state agency and creating the PRISMs and the local partnerships to be able to take action and prevent the spread of invasive species. And we can't hear anything if folks are talking in the room right now.
Unfortunately, Zoom crashed on this computer. But I think we're back up.
Zoom, can you guys hear us again?
We hear you now.
Awesome, thanks. Sorry about that, Meg.
One of them crashed. Okay.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. That's good. Back to you.
Thank you. Also, when you get right back there, I'm sorry. Oh, no worries. Computer is not having a good day.
It's hard being a computer.
Okay. All right, should be able to move forward.
All right, cool. Yep, there we go. All right. All right, everyone. You already heard a lot from me. I'm gonna go over a few more things that I was doing besides the 4 projects that I talked about earlier. Again, I'm Sean. I'm the communications manager with APIP. And yeah, I like to get us in the media as much as possible. I mentioned different people like to receive information in different ways. A lot of people still read the news, whether it's online or in print. So I like to get us in there as much as possible. Every time we're mentioned in the press, whether it's a press release or someone's doing a story on us, someone is seeing APIP, someone is learning about invasive species, or becoming more familiar and more aware of what we do and why, and that's a good thing. So, so far we've been mentioned more than 45 times in the media. I'm gonna do another press release next week and see if I can get that above 50 for the year. But that's a good number. I'm really happy with that. Some of those are press releases. A little tip for any communications people in here is a lot of newspapers, especially smaller to medium-sized ones, are looking to fill space. So if you send them a nicely written press release, they'll just plug that in. I'd rather have them do a story, but if they want to take up space and print what we're sending them, that's great too. But this is an example of a press release I worked on with 1 or 2 people from DEC. This is when hemlock woolly adelgid was found about 50 miles north in the Lake Champlain Valley than where it had previously been found. So, it kind of jumped from the Lake George region up about 50 miles. So I worked with DEC on that, and that got some good play. Adirondack Explorer actually did a story on it, so they didn't just run the press release. At least half a dozen, I think, publications did run the press release, but the Explorer actually made a couple phone calls, which I really like it when that happens. And this is an example too of, I talk about staying on people's radar. It's not just about staying on the public's radar to just let them know like, hey, invasive species, but also like editors and writers too. So this was something we did not pitch. They reached out to us, local ADK magazine, and they were doing a story on community science and volunteers in the Adirondacks, and they thought of APIP. So we were one of the examples that they used of how people can get involved with community science in the Adirondacks. So it's really nice when that happens because it shows like, hey, they're thinking about us. They know who we are. Again, that's a good thing. That's what we want. Yeah. And here's just another example. This is a story that was not pitched either, but again, Adirondack Explorer, they've been great about covering us. They were doing a story, 15 ideas for helping the environment this Earth Day. And again, they thought of us. So they did a quick interview, I believe it was with Brian, if I'm not mistaken, just on, hey, give us a couple quotes on what people can do regarding invasive species for Earth Day. So really nice to see those stories coming in. We did a lot of events this year. Now that we have a full staff, we're able to get around even more than the previous year. We hosted and participated in 52 events in 2025. That actually doesn't include this one, so it's 53 now. The events include all sorts of things. Sometimes we go and we table. Sometimes we do educational webinars. We kind of have a regular series that we do. I'll talk about that in a minute. We do trainings, partner meetings, guided hikes, all sorts of things. Sometimes a lake association or a hiking group or a garden club will invite us and say, hey, can you talk about forest pests? We'll come and do that too. So we are available. 22 of the events were organized by APIP staff, and I think that should actually be 23 because this too. So at least 22 were organized and led by APIP staff. We reached more than 2,200 people in 2025, and that's up from a little over 1,500 people in 2024. So I'm really proud of that increase. So we do educational webinars. Already mentioned this earlier, but we do a hemlock woolly adelgid webinar every winter, every January, and that's a launch for our Forest Pest Hunters program. For a couple of years, this kind of led into me coming on with APIP. It was sort of just a forest pest hunter training. It was kind of long. And then we started to notice a decline in people signing up. So we started mixing it up a couple of years ago and bringing in guest speakers who could speak about different, various topics that are related to HWA. So now instead of having 45 minutes to an hour of an HWA training for forest pest hunters, we have about 45 minutes to an hour of a speaker speaking. In this case, we had why are hemlocks important? Basically, like hemlock ecology, like why should we care about hemlocks and keeping them healthy? And then we had someone talk about management of hemlocks as well. And then Ari spoke for about 15, 20 minutes on the forest pest hunter training. So now we're trying to reach a broader audience, and the numbers have gone up significantly. Where they had started to dip, they're now generally around 70 to 100 people show up to these. It's pretty, we can almost count on it now to get that many people, which is great. And then this I thought was really interesting. We did this last March, but again, we're always trying to think of new ways to get people in to learn. So for an aquatics webinar in March, we did Saving Lakes Through Engaged Communities. Kim and Christina with ADK Action did kind of an overview of engaging the public, but then we had 2 different speakers come in from 2 different lake associations, and they just gave us kind of like little case studies on what they've done to engage the public, to get people out monitoring for invasive species or managing invasive species in their community. So that was kind of neat. We had a good turnout for that one as well, and it was just a little different, instead of just talking about invasives, we talked about, well, if you live on a small lake and you want to keep an eye on it, here are some things you can do to get other people involved. But one thing we really focused on more this year was in-person events. So I came in after COVID. When COVID hit, my understanding is a lot of our webinars were in person, and that all switched to online. We noticed that we had really good turnouts online, so we kept a lot of our webinars online. But a lot of the in-person walks and things that we had done before kind of dropped off. So as Anna mentioned, that we did, a couple lake protectors trainings, and those stayed. Like we generally did a couple per summer, and then if a lake association reached out to us, we would go and do that. But we organized a couple per year. But a lot of the forest pest hunter ones had dropped off. So we decided, like, well, let's get out there more. Let's do more guided walks. So we did, obviously it was 6 terrestrial walks this year on top of the 2 lake protectors. So we went from having 2 that we organized to 8. And they all had really good turnout. At least 10 people showed up for each one. I know I did one that had like 16 or 17 people at it. Some people really like that. They like the hands-on approach, and it's fun for us to do it. So that's what we did differently this year. Instead of doing a really heavy emphasis on webinars, we tried to get out in the field a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to continuing that more in 2026. Whoops. And then Brian touched on this, so I won't talk about it too much, but we also did our spring partner meeting. Really great turnout for that. Really great to see the native plant nursery. That was a lot of fun. And this is us pre-Anna. I was going to Photoshop her in, but no, this is before she came up. That's why she's not there. The New York Invasive Species Awareness Week, that happens at the beginning of June every year. The one in 2026 is going to be the second week of June, starting June 8th, which is a Monday, and it goes through the week. Generally, each PRISM across the state does at least one kind of webinar or training, some kind of an event for NYSAW. We really kicked it up this year. We're always trying to do something different. Like we partnered with a brewery last year, and they brewed a beer, IPA, invasive plant ale, and we did a trivia night that had some invasive species questions. Really fun event. This year we did something different. We did 3 events. So we did 2 in-person walks. So it's me on a cat's trail, the Wadham's Lookout Trail. Look out for invasive species because it's a lookout trail. And yeah, we break it down for basic plant identification, opposite versus alternate leaves, make sure we're all speaking the same language. And then we kind of dive into invasive species, and they had several along the way. So I was able to show people some invasive species in the wild. And then Ari did one at the Bocat River Nature Preserve as well that same week. So we did those 2, and then we did this. This was a really cool event, the Saranac Lake Free Library Invasive Species Pull. We had somewhere around 25 people show up to this. So the Saranac Lake Library had 2 invasive species planted as part of their landscaping. And there was a total of 4 plants, if I'm not mistaken. One was a big wing burning bush, which you can see here. These guys were really proud of getting that root ball out of the ground there. And then we had 3 barberry plants. And we had a table set up with some basic invasive species information. We gave a little talk. And then we had tools and everything for people to use. And, some people definitely came because they saw the press release or they saw it on Facebook. But a lot of people were like these 2 guys, they were just walking by and they're like, hey, this looks cool. And I mean, see, they got right in there. I have another picture of them carrying that thing. It's impressive. But yeah, we ripped out the invasive species. And, the fact that the invasives were there gave us a chance to say, hey, here's how you identify these 2 fairly common invasive species that are used in landscaping. Here's why they're bad, and now we're going to rip them out. And then we replaced them with native wildflowers and blueberry bushes. The library was thrilled because this was blocking their new security camera. This wing burning bush was like taller than me. Yeah, so it took a lot of effort to get it out of there, but it was a really fun event and really good participation in that. And then every other year, the DEC does a New York State Invasive Species Expo. So that was in September, which feels like 5 years ago at this point. APIP staff were there. It's a 3-day event. Sunday is like a community day that happens next to the farmers market in Saratoga. If you've never been, it's a great farmers market. But yeah, Brian, Carolyn, and I tabled that day, spoke to over 100 people. And then on Monday and Tuesday, there's workshops and things like that. So APIP staff participated in 3 workshops. I led a photographing invasive species workshop that we went out on the trail and kind of took some pictures, and I gave them some photography basics. I also partnered with 2 or 3 people from other PRISMs to do a telling your story workshop. And then Brian did an aquatic presentation on water quality and milfoil management. So it was a really fun event, really great to see people there. So I mentioned earlier the Citizen Science brochure. And again, if anybody wants a stack of these, let me know. I got talking to Anne from AWI. She's like, oh, I want to do an event this fall. Do you want to help me? I was like, yeah, sure. And she was thinking Citizen Science. I was like, well, we have this brochure that I need help with. And one thing led to another, like, let's make it a Citizen Science Love Your Lakes event. And this served as the launch for the brochure. It was at the Hotel Saranac. We had around 100 people show up to it. And the first hour we had 8 organizations, including APIP, set up tables, and we really emphasized make them kid-friendly, make them hands-on, make them interactive, and people did. This was, I believe, Marky, you led this one. That's my daughter, Lucina, looking through the microscope, and her friend, Anya. And they were there for a while, right, looking through the microscope, really liked it. But it was great because I felt like the kids were all occupied, the adults were all mingling and stopping by the tables and learning things. Then we shuffled everyone into the ballroom for an hour of presentations. Each one was only about 12 minutes long, but on 3 different topics involved here. One of them was aquatic invasive species. So we kept that nice and short. And then there was another hour at the end just to kind of mingle. So all in all, I thought it was a really successful event, really exciting. And we're talking about doing another one for Invasive Species Awareness Week in June, possibly Dewey Mountain with some trail walks and some things like that. So keep on the lookout for that. We're going to plan it after the holidays, but it's in the works. All right, so I mentioned our email newsletter. I just want to kind of touch on this real quick, some of the data from it. So I talk about how we see data now. It's really nice to be able to see, like, are people opening this? Are we gaining subscribers? Like, what's going on with it? Does anyone care? And it turns out, yes. The answer is yes to all those questions. Since we began the newsletter in April, that's when the first one went out, we've gained 190 subscribers. So we have a total of 736 right now. Hopefully we gain a few more from this event. But don't sign up if you're not going to open emails because that hurts my numbers. Here's just kind of like a quick breakdown of what we did. The email newsletter marketing funnel, 6,915 emails went out. That's not like individual ones, but like to people, right? 6,800 of them were delivered. But this is really interesting. 4,396 were open. That's 64%. So it kind of depends on who you talk to, what the best number is for your open rate with these things, but it's generally a lot lower than that. I think most sort of resources I found, if you're in the teens, that's considered a pretty good open rate. So 64%, I think, is phenomenal. I'm really happy. People care. People are opening the email. And click, 8%. That seems like a really low number, but again, numbers vary depending on which source you're going to, but usually 2, 3, 4% is considered a decent click rate. So that's how many links are getting clicked on by people who open the email. So that tells us, like, okay, people are not just opening the email, but they're engaging with it a little bit. They're kind of reading it. We learned that events and invasive species tend to be 2 of the most clicked on links that we have in our email. So that's good to know. So we want people going to the events and learning. We want them learning about invasive species. And I just thought this was interesting, so I threw it in here. But clicks by device. By and large, like, people on mobile or on desktop rather are opening our emails and clicking. I thought that would be the opposite in this day and age, but it's not. So a lot of desktop users are opening our emails. Yeah, so that's all I've got. We have 3 upcoming events right now. We're going to have more on the way. We'll have an aquatics one in March that we haven't quite figured out yet. Well, our HWA webinar, Ari mentioned, is going to be Thursday, January 22nd. It's not on our website yet, but it will be in a couple days. So please keep an eye out for that. You should follow us on Facebook because I always do a big push throughout, leading up to it for the next couple months. So you'll be reminded of that. And that's going to be cool because we'll have a talk about biocontrols with HWA and some landowner options for HWA, along with the brief forest pest hunters training. And then we do a terrestrial and aquatic partner meeting. So those are Wednesday, February 11th and Thursday, February 12th, and those will be virtual. So those are not on our website either. We just put these together, but they will be within the week. So just keep an eye out for those. And if you're on our email list, you'll see plenty about them. And that's all I have for now. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
For why you were sending out the newsletter and you were curious that more people were clicking on the link in the desktop than on the mobile app.
Yeah.
Is the newsletter formatted well for, me personally, if I'm checking my email on my phone, I'm very often looking at an email and I'm like, oh, I'm going to check on this later.
Yeah.
When I can click on the link and I can have a nice big screen to look at all the information at. And I just think that things are generally formatted better for a desktop.
Yeah.
Any idea why there's a discrepancy?
I don't. I was surprised to see that. There could be a number of reasons. If people are reopening their email at work and checking it, that could be a reason. We go through constant contact. I don't think I mentioned that. So they are really nicely formatted. One thing I forgot to mention with the emails too, is that now our communication with volunteers, so forest pest hunters and lake protectors, we have templates for those too. So now, like when Anna wants to reach out to the lake protectors, volunteers and give them an update, we send it out through Constant Contact, and the open rates on those are like in the 70s. So our lake protectors are really engaged. Forest pest hunters, a little bit lower, but it's around 60, which is still really good. So we can see that people, like, we're not wasting our time here. The volunteers are opening the emails, they're reading the updates. Yeah, it's good.
It's easier for us old guys to open them up on the laptop.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't.
No, I mean, I think still, I also agree. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
If I have a chance to look at something on my phone or on a desktop, I'm gonna choose the desktop every time.
I prefer it too, yeah.
Kathy said that on in the thing. There might be some age demographics. Her comment in the chat about that.
That hadn't occurred to me. Are there any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you. Oh, yeah.
One more. Throughout your entire presentation, you guys have had gorgeous pictures. Are you the one who takes those, Sean?
Some of them, and then we actually, our seasonal staff did a great job taking photos this year. So
nice.
Hats off to them, because I don't get out in the field nearly as much as I want to. Yeah, I did take some of them, but a lot of them were seasonal staff.
Yeah, how about all the goal slides? Are you the source of those?
Which ones?
No, all the goals, goal 1, goal 2, goal 3. Gorgeous pictures on each of those. I'd love to know where they are.
Oh, thank you. I know I took the one for my goal 3. I remember that. I'd have to look at the other 2 to tell you if I took them or not, but yeah, that was on a little overlook. We kind of sometimes we'll tack on like a little hike at the end of a walk, just to give people a chance to talk and ask us questions. So I took that picture. And I can't remember the name of the overlook, but it's right near Lake George.
Nice. We're always thinking we got to take more field pictures too.
Yeah. Our seasonal style, like I have more photos than I know what to do with right now, which a problem I've never had before. So I'm really happy about that. They did a great job. Yeah.
Especially if you're the only one doing the thing.
And we're more than happy to share photos. If people need photos of invasive species or landscapes or things for there. So reach out to Sean or me if you see a photo that you think we could really use.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Trying to go out. I don't actually know what they do.
So. Well, thank you, everyone. Feel free to pull me aside later if you have any questions.
I don't know.
If somebody can help you get from you or something.
Short on time, so I'm gonna take us with an update about what I've been working on and a little bit about our research and innovation work. And hopefully get us all to lunch on time. I don't get out in the field very much, but I did have the opportunity to do some drone flights this summer for our sister PRISM SLILO that I also spend time doing. So here's a photo of me saying that I do actually leave my computer sometimes. So like I mentioned, a lot of my work is behind the scenes, as hopefully you took in from the other presentations at APIP. We collect a lot of data. So a lot of my work is focused on wrangling that data and analyzing that data and supporting our field staff to make sure that the systems they collect data are working and that they can have successful field seasons. So I was behind the scenes helping to support the successful field season we just had, just normal day-to-day stuff, but then we were also really working hard to improve our systems and processes. So I worked to significantly update some of our manuals and training processes this summer, which was really helpful for our field staff. It really helped to get them onboarded faster than they had in the past, and they had pretty successful field seasons because of that. I'm also working on a new manual about our internal data management processes, so that will be really helpful for our staff moving forward. Like I said, we use a lot of data. We have a lot of data, and then we use a lot of dashboards to track our progress on a bunch of different projects and variables. So keeping our dashboards going and also making new dashboards where possible. And then also we put out a lot of reports into the world. So we're also working on improving our reports to make them more useful to the people we want to be reading and using them. So it's a little behind the scenes look about what I've been up to. On a similar note, I'll skip the live demo just in interest of time. But as you probably heard throughout this presentation, forest pests are ever present on our mind and becoming a bigger and bigger problem for our PRISM. But our existing data systems are really set up to collect more plant data rather than pest data. So we identified this need to have a better system for collecting our forest pest monitoring efforts. I worked with our terrestrial team to create a new survey 123 form, which is better suited to forest pest work and also allows us to distinguish between are we going out to check a trap? Are we walking along a trail? Or are we just sort of bushwhacking through the woods? On this map on the bottom here, you can see there's a polygon that showed where someone walked randomly through the woods looking for a forest pest. And then in the bottom left, there's also a trail that someone followed. So if anyone volunteers with our lake program, that form probably looks pretty familiar. It's based off of that, but this one's tailored to our forest pest work. And thanks to some of our volunteers who tested out the form for us, we'll be rolling it out to the rest of our volunteers this HWA season, so stay tuned for that. Another sort of behind the scenes thing that we've been working on is, we're not only APIP, but we're also staff members of the Nature Conservancy. And so the Nature Conservancy has some pretty ambitious goals that they want to hit by 2030 and some pretty specific metrics they want to hit to get there. So I've been working with Brian to pull data from our work over the past 5 years and sort of feed them into TNC's metrics. We want to have our good work that we're doing count towards these metrics. So we're really focused on supporting lands, freshwater, and people goals for TNC's 2030 goals. And a lot of this data comes from us, but a lot of this data comes from you. So thank you to all of our partners who have been collecting and documenting your data over the past few years. That point in IMAP, we get to count it as work towards these goals. So please keep up that great work over the next couple of years as we work to hit our 2030 goals. A similar line in metrics, Ryan and I have been having a lot of discussions about, what counts, what a successful look like for our PRISM sort of on a bigger scale. And one of the things we've been talking about is creating a history of invasion for our PRISM. So I worked with the IMAP team to develop a history of invasion for our PRISM. So where was the first documented case of a terrestrial species or an aquatic species in our PRISM? So Brian's pulling up a map of, we have an interactive map of this data. And this data allows us to better track the progress of invasions. If we detected invasive for the first time down here, how is it moving throughout the park? And then also, are there pathways for invasion? Are there areas in the park where we're seeing more introductions of invasives than others? If it doesn't work, that's also okay. Oh, there you go. So we will send this out in the follow-up email, but if anyone's interested in playing around with this data more, feel free to poke on one of the points. You can click around in this map. The blue points are aquatic, the green are terrestrial. If you click on the point, it will tell you a little bit of information about what that species is, and it'll link you out to the IMAP link so you can learn more about that specific detection. So this has been a really helpful data set for us as we sort of think about invasives on a large scale across the PRISM and thinking about metrics of success. Sort of as a follow-up for this, for my graduate school program for this semester, I'm creating a history of invasion, but on a by lake basis, so that we'll have a data set for every lake in the park that has invasives about where the first detection was in each of those lakes. And I'm also analyzing the data a bit to see how boat launches impact the invasion rates and how boat stewards might be impacting those invasion rates. So stay tuned for that data. Okay, let's see. Thanks for pulling that up. My clicker doesn't work. That's it. The last thing I wanted to touch on was an innovation project that our aquatic team has been working on, looking at milfoil management and impacts on water quality. So over the past 2 years, our team has been working with a couple lake associations to monitor areas with invasive milfoils that have management activities, as well as areas that have milfoil but no management activities. These samples were collected as part of the Adirondack Lake Assessment Program, ALAP, which is run by the Paul Smith College Adirondack Watershed Institute and Protect the Adirondacks. And we have some preliminary results based on 2024 data that I'll share with you now. So we were interested to see if there was an impact on monitoring location and the data that we were getting from the water. Thankfully, as you can see in this graph, it doesn't seem to be a huge difference in the results we're getting depending on where we're sampling. This is really helpful because a lot of the historic data is taken over the deeper part of the lakes. And so based on this data, we feel good that we can use the historic deeper location samplings as a good data set to compare what we're seeing now to what was happening in the past. And then looking at water quality parameters, there are a couple key water quality parameters that people were concerned might be impacted by milfoil management. And so far, we're not seeing huge differences in the treatment area versus other areas of the lake. So these are promising results from this study. And like I said, there's still preliminary results, but some key takeaways we have is that so far it seems that managing invasive milfoils both chemically and mechanically is not having a huge impact on big picture water quality in these lakes. We're looking forward to receiving our 2025 results and hopefully seeing these trends continue across there. And then I'll just end with saying a big thank you to the lake associations who have been helping us with this study. And that is all from me and innovation, and I can pass it off. Unless there's any questions, I could pass it off to Brian to take us home.
There's one question in the chat about for the history of invasions. Are you looking at museum specimens to see when the species were first collected? So where did that data come from?
That is a good question. So all of that data is from IMAP. So it's any record that was entered into IMAP was part of that. So I know that there are some historic records in there, but I'm not sure specifically where they were gathered from. IMAP is a great data source, but I think something we're learning about the limitations of the data we have to work with is IMAP is only representation of when data was reported, not necessarily when something was first there. So we're taking that data with a little bit of grain of salt, but for the most part, it does seem to be relatively accurate in terms of where something was first recorded. But yeah, I encourage people, if you have historic records that aren't in IMAP, please enter them because we use IMAP data a lot for things like this. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was good. Sorry if you mentioned this. How far back did the historic data go?
I learned this problem because the script we were running kept crashing because someone had put in a date of like 15 CE or something, but they really meant to put in the year 1500. So I think as it can go back as far as the 1500s, but that is like we knew it was there, but we really don't know.
There's some one from museum specimens that are from like the 1920s in there, from like the 1930s. I mean, like Steve is saying online, like the state museum records are not all in IMAP, so you know that's another good place we can go.
Sounds like a good internship.
Yeah. So, sorry, go for it, Al.
So I was just wondering, for the Forest Pest Hunters surveillance reforms, are those going to go into IMAP just looking like regular IMAP observations, or are they going to look different?
I think we're still working on that a little bit, but I do believe we're planning to put them in as normal IMAP observations. One of the questions in that form is, did you submit it to IMAP? So we're hoping to integrate that form with our normal IMAP protocols for our Forest Pest Hunters. Yeah.
So like we're trying to look at it as an improvement. So like when Bill and Dom go out and they do their awesome surveys, you know, the data that they've currently, in the past, what they've been putting in is just like, a positive detection or a point non-detect. So I either find it here or find it don't. But they're not really just looking at points. They're walking trails. They're zigzagging up and down mountain ranges. Like these guys are covering tons of area. So we didn't really have anything that like, hey, how do we get that information in there? And so this is hopefully a better form that we can do that. And then yes, those can be transferred over as searched areas or non-detect areas or things to IMAP and basis.
So if we put in a non-detect polygon for HWA, you don't see that? You do so.
There are ways that you can do that in different like Survey 123, IMAP and basis, but just with like the IMAP mobile app, which was what we have most people use, it's just the point.
Yeah.
Carolyn, as far as that, you know, in passing, I know Dom's kind of the same thing. We'll go out into an area multiple times, you know, like 1 week, you know, cross the range. Next week, we're kind of ducking down, then having to go across. I mean, is it something that you would want to capture all that data, say like season, and say, okay, we went, you know, we look like at the bench area on Lake George, or you know, I geared it a couple 3 years ago. I did part of the Tongue Mountain Range, right? Just essentially just went all the way down the thing over several weeks and days. I mean, that be all captured in one area search, or just, you know, multiple searches put together. I don't know. I just
No, I appreciate the on the ground experience. I think that's something we're still a little bit discussing, but the way Brian and I had envisioned this form is like when you get back to your car after you've done your survey, fill this out. And it's okay if you're going to the same places multiple times. It's helpful for us to just see where people are going. And we can do stuff on the back end to, you know, erase out those overlap layers if we just want to sort of some of the area that people looked at. And Brian's pulling up an example of just, he selected that he was doing bushwhack in the forest. It prompted him to draw the area that he surveyed. So now he's just drawing a polygon. And then, pretty simple, drop a few points. You can do multiple things if you want to.
Ones, or maybe I did a thing, can I do it?
No, it only lets you do one.
Okay, but then go back and see what the trail. Then maybe you did a trail. So then you can see like a trail would be just a line. So it's a trail. I can just trace the trail, you know.
Yeah, if you have feedback as we're using it, feel free to keep sharing it with us. But just trying to get a better sense of where people are going out and collecting the data a little bit better.
How will it come to the people surveying? Would you send out a link to?
I believe we're planning to send out the link and talk about it in our kickoff webinar. And I think you guys have the link. I can send it to you.
Yeah, we played with.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions for Carolyn, we will finish up with the last little bit. Hopefully you've been hearing a theme throughout today about partners and recognition. I often say this a fair amount, but this is our but this is our 6.6 million acre prism, the blue line, and then Franklin and Clinton County is going all up there. If you take our full-time staff and divide it out, that means each of us is responsible for 1.37 million acres. So that's a lot of work. So this is why we need all of you to help us cover these dozen different counties. You know, so much great work from this year. I mean, I can't even go through. Lake Clear Association did a great job of cleaning up garlic mustard and narrow leaf bittercrest along the Adirondack Rail Trail. One of our volunteers who was in one of our lake protectors things, you know, we teach them on 16 species, was like, hey, you know that crayfish you talked about? Like, I think I have one in my lake. And this is the first physical sample with the photo that's ever been documented in the Adirondacks. So, yep, he was right. Yeah, so people are learning where they're actually taking the things further. And here's Ev out there with our Lake George Hemlock Coalition. So we're going out, we're looking for hemlocks. We have our Nishi friends. We're all working together. You know, these big problems like forest pests are going to take big collaborations through there. So tons and tons of partners that are going through there, you know, and then volunteers, you know, people coming out, helping us with the pools, helping us be lake protectors, lake management trackers, forest pest hunters. We could not do it without you. And so it's really, really hard when we say like, hey, how can we, you know, we want to highlight some of the great things. And there's so many great partners, you know, who are in this room. It's really actually difficult to kind of choose like, well, what's one good example that we can really shine the spotlight on? So we were kind of talking about it as a staff. I said, well, there's this one group that's been really special to me, and I think they've done a really incredible job. So we wanted to do a little extra special highlight for the volunteer recognition this year. And it's for our friends from the Eagle Lake Property Owners group. They're a local group of landowners and lake associations members right on a medium-sized lake right outside of Ticonderoga, right to the east of Paradox Lake. And they had a history of Eurasian water milfoil management that kind of stalled. And I remember that I was trying to think back, like, how did I first get it? And I went back and I actually had it. Susan went on our website and she just found like there's a general info. If you have a question, like send it into to us. And this is the email that Susan sent me. Says, hey, I live on this. We're setting up a new committee to eradicate milfoil. It's been becoming more and more of a problem. We tried stuff in 2008, but we kind of gave up. And, I'm very anxious to learn about measuring and grants and, of course, action. Any help or advice would be greatly appreciated. Could you give me a phone call? And I remember our first phone call, Susan was like, how do I do this? What is this going on? Go through there. And it was just a great conversation that we had. And she took it and really ran with it. I said, well, one of the things that we can help you do is our lake management tracker program. We have set monitoring points, set this up. We give you the technology, we teach you how to do this, but then you provide the people power to go out there and monitor on the lakes. And so we said, okay, we set up, I can't remember the first 160-ish.
123 points.
123 points, we said, but we said hey, the first year, let's just start small. Let's just do half the lake. I'd rather you start small and do 60 of them well, then we can't do 120 of them. Well, they went out and said, nope, we got this whole thing. And her and her friends, they said, no, we know how to do this. So they went out and were able to go out and monitor all of the sites in their first year. And that was in 2024.
Yeah, it's been a couple years.
It was in 2024. And Susan was not willing to let that be the only thing she did. So her and I were talking. She's like, hey, I heard there's this grant opportunity. Do you think we can get it? I said, well, you might not be suited for this part of it, but this other part of it, I think you'd be greatly suited for. And Susan, I think you said you've never written a grant.
Never written a grant
before in her life. We worked together, and she was able to write the grant to DEC and got one to do a lake management plan and worked with Adirondack Research. So they have this really awesome aquatic invasive species management plan, incorporating a lot of the data we've taken in, a lot of the different science, talks about management plans, talks about strategies to go forward. And so then now she had a plan. Now they had gone out monitoring. So what's our next step to do after that?
Got a treat.
We got to do some action. So we have a plan. We've been doing monitoring. They were able to raise money, come up and do some test areas with chemical management in Eagle Lake, and that was done in
June of this year.
Yeah. And so they were going out. Here's a picture of the boat that was out there. And yeah, it has just been incredible to see this from, I remember 2 years ago, you came to this very meeting, our end of year one, and sat back and you said, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're just going to get started and go through it. And it has just been spectacular. So, we wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of the Eagle Lake Association, and especially their chair, Susan, who has been there. So please join me in giving a round warm of applause. We have a plaque that I would like to give you, and then also some gifts right through here. Yeah, we'll get one picture right now with Susan, and then we can do some other ones afterwards with everybody. Go through there, right to there. So, what is this way?
Some stand up.
Which way are we going?
That screen is strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, look at me. Cool, that's started.
Susan, would you like to say any words about this journey, or anybody else from Eagle Lake?
Well, I just like to say that Brian started it all. I knew nothing about anything environmental or anything about the lake. I just saw these weeds growing up everywhere and affecting what I did on the lake. And so I figured if it affected me, then it would affect other people. And we really had to overcome a huge negative idea about milfoil because we had been so unsuccessful in the past. The board has been unsuccessful. So talking about all that Sean was talking about we rebranded everything about Eagle Lake. We did a new logo, Facebook page, website. We did a flyer. We joined the Loon Association. We did all the requirements for that. And so there's really about 10 people, not just myself for sure, that have worked really hard. And I've probably been the thorn in their side. Because I went
Yeah, hi, this is George Speck calling.
It's been amazing.
Right, Thursday afternoon,
Been,
315.
you know, everybody has supported everybody, and we still have a long ways to go. And of course, as everybody knows in this room, you know, you never get rid of milfoil, so we just have to keep going with the process. And we have probably 2/3 of our lake treated. We want to do the other third this next year. And hopefully we'll just keep the owners engaged and willing to work and donate, and hopefully we can get another grant to help us continue on our way. So, but it's been fun. It's been really fun.
Well, big thanks to Susan and to the Eagle Lake property owners. She's been very generous. APIP is here to help, but without committed partners and people on the ground, they've done a ton of the legwork. And, you know, that's a great example for us to shine. You know, APIP alone, we can't do it all. We're happy to provide the technology, the expertise, help you along there, but it really takes really committed people who are invested in their communities, into their lakes and their forests, who are willing to step up and work in partnership with us. So we were just thrilled for the Eagle Lake property owners. So just to wrap us up with a few things before we go to lunch right here. Just reminder to put your stuff in IMAP invasives. You hear all these numbers, we're talking about the different things. So much of that comes from here. And just to start to say another thing, like Carolyn was talking about with our 2030 goals, it's not just these nice little green points that go into there where we find things. You can also put in there where you're doing management. So if you're a lake that's removing milfoil, or you're treating Japanese knotweed or bush honeysuckle or something, you can actually go in there and put that information in there. Super important. If you need help with knowing how to do it, we can help train you on how to do that. It's actually pretty easy. Another thing is be lookout for our partner dashboard. We'll send out in January out to everybody. Hey, we're trying to just summarize what species did you monitor, which species did you manage. We only need one per organization, so you don't have to have multiple people fill it out. It generally takes about 5 to 10 minutes and helps provide a good summary. Also make sure that you sign up in here as you came today. These are things that all get you points towards being in our engaged partners and counting towards our partners reporting. So look for that coming out. Upcoming events, we already mentioned the January Forest Pest Hunters, February, our virtual roundtable meetings where we'll get to share some of the things that are coming for that next year. And then sometime in late April, early May, we're going to do our spring partner meeting. So with that, I want to end and say thank you for everybody coming here. This will end the Zoom portion of it. We'll close off and wave goodbye to all of our online people who've been watching through Zoom. We're going to quickly see if we can take this crowd.
Group photo, yes.
Group photo.
Yes. Yeah, let's go outside in 2 minutes. I have to run and get a new battery for my camera upstairs. But if I can get everybody out on the front porch here in less than 5 minutes, that would be great.
We'll mass up there. We'll take a group photo and then